Fube. This is Messiahj'el, aka Warlock Asylum, coming at you once again with another episode of War Talk. And today we're going to be doing, but actually it's not an episode of Raw Talk. Well, it is in a way. We'll be doing beginning the series, Understanding the Ivory Tablets of the Crow. So, um, this book was published 7 years ago, and it's an amazing text of self-cultivation. And I've been dying to get into this for quite some time. Just had to get through some other things before we began this series. I thought it would be good to go through the Necronomicon series and just, you know, do it in a way that um, I was able to make some progression in understanding. The Ivory Tablets is more centered on self-cultivation. It's dealing with the internal workings of the body, the minds that exist inside the body. And its premise is, really based upon the fact that while spirits can aid, spirits are an aid. So if you understand that, let's say, for example, if, you have some situation with your eyes, you may wear glasses. If you have some situation with your legs, you may use a cane or a walking stick. So calling on the spirits, it can be empowering if one is like learning from them, learning how to, um, learning some of life lessons, learning how to think, to feel, to speak. Those things is very valuable in terms of just getting to a certain gnosis just about yourself. But what happens when you are able to walk on your own? And so this is where the Ivory Tablets comes in at. And one interesting thing is that we can see this right away when we open up the book. This was interesting. I had a pretty interesting story in my mind about the text. Was that the Ivory Tablets came out early in 2013, and I had met with some Shinto priests from Japan and spiritualists. These are people who, they may have looked at, the spiritualists look at, the Japanese spiritualists, they look at the Shinto shrines and stuff, how some people in America may look at, a big church like the Catholic Church or something. They may think that, this is okay. It breeds some things, but it's not the total. And they may stand a little bit indifferent. They may have some spiritual traditions outside of that they find interesting. So what happened when we met is that they had told me that they expect the Yatagarasu to speak, which is the three-legged crow, and they said it hasn't spoken in over 1,000 years. So I thought that was amazing. And to have the Ivory Tablets of the Crow come out at this time, that was pretty tough, So I'm gonna go into reading the passage from this text. My glasses on, actually, and we'll get right into it. Okay, beginning with the first page, the birth of the crow. And the crow, as you could see, is like that inner divine spark in each of us. So I just want to kind of give some light to that. And it says, beyond the stars, beyond the darkness of the night, they dwell. Into the realm of light, they reside in stillness without need of the elements. For what is it? It is consciousness. The mere reflections of these words cause that which is self-aware to stare like itself in darkness, yet it remains whole. These are the footprints of the crow. And then paragraph 2, the witnesses of these thoughts are few. The mind must learn how to raise itself up and meet its reflection in the realm of light. The mere reflection of these words caused that which is no more to stare at itself in the light. Understanding these simple things is the basis of every creation, the footprints of the crow. Okay. All right. So that was the first passage from the Ivory Tablets of the Crow, and it talks about the mind must raise itself to meet its reflection. And, most of the systems, I think Gurdjieff spoke about this, revolve around the dead, setting incense up, candles up. These are things to attract disincarnate spirits, some beneficial, some not, but it really has nothing to do with our thought process, and, if we're going to kind of, maintain some sort of, or gain some insight into ourselves, a true enlightenment, if we're going to gain that true enlightenment, then we have to be able to work on ourselves, to work on our way of thinking, to work on our emotions, our thoughts, and our desires. I'll give you an example. Like, most people who pursue the clairvoyant arts spend most of their lives in spiritual gangs, where they call up for assistance. Hey, I need some help. I got this problem. Can you handle this for me? But when it comes to thinking and that sort of thing, they're not able to augment themselves to deal with a situation in the clairvoyant sense. For example, when you look at, some of the spirits or energies that people may call, they they're able to do different things for people, able to, go through time, can go ahead of the time. They can, spy on a person and stuff like that. But wouldn't it be more effective if the spiritual practitioners be able to do those things themselves? And so because of that reason, they're always searching for the essential knowledge. There's one thing to have knowledge, but to search for the essential knowledge is a person is still looking for the basics. They're still looking for something outside themselves. And this brings us back to the Fool card and the Tarot deck, right? I'll give you an example. One good way to secure protection spiritually is through virtue. Virtue it doesn't cover it. Yeah, it pretty much covers a lot of different things, because that energy is a cosmic law. And if you study that in reference to the I am laws, you can see how beneficial it is. Some people enjoy the association and fellowship of being in the otherworldly congregation, and that's, very important. However, what the Ivory Tablets is saying, and this is what I find even more fascinating, is the exact same thing in this first section that we read about one raising their mind, is the exact same thing that's said in the Gates of the Necronomicon. Let me read a passage of that text. And this is going to be from Gates of the Necronomicon. It's going to be on page 150. Notice what it says. It says, there is a memory encoded within the rites and the words of power that is triggered once the book is open, once the conscious decision has been made to open the gates. The memory begins to work in a way upward from the deepest layer of the unconscious mind to meet the light of day. And that's the same thing that it says in the Ivory Tablets, how the mind has to rise itself up. The difference here is that with the Simon tone, they're speaking about a stellarite. In the Ivory Tablets, they're dealing with the mind of man. And why do we say that? It's because in some ways the stellar rights is a little bit indifferent to our normal way of thinking until we adapt to a process to it. However, nature, the nature spirit, and that surrounding is completely enveloped into the mind of man. So this is why, this sort of introduces one to working with energies within themselves first. Then the external side will be the energies that are found in nature, which of course the kami connect to. You know what I'm saying? There's not a lot of systems available publicly that works with nature energies, because nature energies completely complement the energies of the organs. You see what I'm saying? And everything is related to stars and underworld and that sort of thing, but nature energies in particular. And sometimes you could tap into this through some of the chthonic rites, but it's a little bit interesting. So that's what the first chapter, The Birth of the Crow, is the consciousness that it takes to rise up to meet the mind that rules nature. So, for example, let me just explain this a little bit more, because, people are not, familiar with this. Some people watching this may not be familiar with this. Hold on a second. Yeah, I just want to take my glasses off a minute, let my eyes get some rest. A lot of people may not be familiar with this, but ultimately what it's saying is that the mind of there's a mind. It's like the internet. Your computer, like you're watching this, it can tap into some sections of the internet. And more than likely, you may have a tendency to watch some of the same things, or to research some of the same things, or you may have a routine in how you proceed through the internet. That's what we call the local mind. But then there's a non-local mind, which encompasses the whole internet as in concept, right? And this is a non-local mind. This is how people can, determine, what's going on to your future and stuff like that, because they're tapping into the non-local mind, which is relative to the subconscious mind. Okay, so when it says to rise, that consciousness to rise to meet that mind, it's the situation where you begin to recognize that mind, the mind that rules over everything in the natural world, the mind of man, which expresses itself through nature. So in the beginning, when you're alchemating yourself, and some people won't even tell you this, that even in Freemasonry, the rituals in Freemasonry actually mimic human organs, because human organs each have their own mind. The mind that you use to add is not the same mind that keeps the heart beating, or that responds to your foot twitching and stuff like that. You can send the command, but ultimately these organs, these internal organs, have minds of their own. They have a life of their own, and they work within the whole to make your being, for your spirit to sit upon the throne. Okay, and that mind, first is interesting just to get an awareness of the different minds that you have within yourself, or what you call yourself. It's not really yourself, but that's within your body. And how do you respond to them? Are you able to recognize that? You know what I'm saying? Now, if a person has spent an entire career in just calling spirits, how are they going to recognize this? You know what I'm saying? How are they going to recognize the functions of the different body parts, and, the mind, and what their urges and desires and how it comes against you, or urges of even habit? You can have a routine, and you start noticing that when you employ that routine, certain thoughts come to your head. Can you determine these things if you made a habit of calling spirits? And there's nothing wrong with calling spirits. There's nothing wrong with having invisible friends. The thing is that some people may become entrenched in that and think that's actually the work, right? That's not the work. That's just having some friends. You know what I'm saying? If you call someone like, yo, man, I need to get a job, and they hook you up, you doing the job. You're not constantly engaging in the process of getting the hookup. You got to do the job. But unfortunately, in the clairvoyant world, that's what happens. People constantly, looking to get a hookup, and they think getting the hookup itself is the work. I'll give you an example. I was one time years ago, man, this is quite some time ago, and I was I was meeting with one of my mentors, and he told me, he said, look, so I says, the first time I met him, he's like, well, I'm gonna give you your first exercise. So I'm thinking it's some crazy, meditation stuff or some stuff that's, way off the moon or whatever. And he says, I want you, every time you walk through a door, I want you to tap yourself on back of the hand every time you walk through the portal of a door. I said, that's it? He said, yeah, that's what I want you to do. So I says, okay. So the first day, I must have did it like 95% of the time. I was good. Boom, 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 boom. Then by the end of the week, it was getting towards Friday. I noticed that I wasn't remembering to do it every time I walked through a portal door. But what I did notice is that, what distracted me from doing that was a consistent thought. Maybe something I need to work on in life. So finally, the week was over. It was Saturday, and I met up with him, and he sat down. He says, well, how'd you make out with the exercise? And I felt embarrassed because by the time it got to Friday, Saturday, it just wasn't the same intensity as it was Monday. And he said, that's the point of the exercise, to show you how much you are sleeping. That's spiritual sleep, right? It's not being conscious of an idea. It's not agreeing to some philosophy. It's being aware of what you're doing, what you're supposed to be doing in your own personal life. That tells you if a person is sleeping or awake. Because if you can't, tap yourself on the back of your hand every time you walk through a portal or a door, and you keep forgetting, really, how much of your mind are you using? Now, anyone could do that exercise, whether they're calling on a spirit or not. But if they are calling on something else, how is that helping them with that exercise? You see what I'm saying? How is that helping them use their mind? So this is what it means when it says that for the mind, to me, it's reflection of itself. It says the same thing in the Necronomicon on page 150. And once again, I have to say that's why that book is, you can begin with it. It may be your first journey, but if you 1 degree off, it's going to take you 1,000 miles away, off the mark of the destination, because you don't get it. You know what I'm saying? Some people want to align this with something, with this, and want to align it with that. And when you look at, things that people have been doing, it's good. It's a beautiful thing. There's some art, and there's a art in it, in magic itself, or in ceremony and stuff. It's beautiful. There's a beautiful thing with connections. Some of the connections that you make are with relatives who have moved on and stuff. But as far as your work to really break the human barrier, you first have to think. You know what I'm saying? But if your mental faculty, your consciousness is not within your possession, then you're going to eventually become a slave of something else. And so this is what it means in the first chapter, Birth of the Crow, and we'll be going through it a little bit more. But I just wanted to drop a couple of things on you before we proceed. So this is Messiahj'el, aka Warlock Asylum, and thanks for attending the first lesson in the Ivory Tablets of the Crow. I want to say Wafube and have a good night.